The luxury SUV segment has always been a battlefield where German engineering pride meets American market demands, but something unprecedented is happening right now that's sending shockwaves through Munich. After dominating the three-row luxury SUV market for nearly 7 years, BMW's X7 is facing its most formidable challenger yet, and the threat isn't coming from where most industry analysts expected. The 2027 Audi Q9 has just emerged from Ingolstadt with specifications and capabilities that are forcing BMW to reconsider everything they thought they knew about this segment. What makes this particularly intriguing is that Audi has essentially rewritten the rulebook that BMW themselves created. Let me take you back to 2019 when BMW launched the X7. The automotive press called it bold, some said controversial, but there was no denying that BMW had finally answered the question their loyal customers had been asking for years. They wanted a legitimate three-row SUV that didn't compromise on the driving dynamics that made BMW, well, BMW. The X7 delivered on that promise spectacularly. It offered the space of a Cadillac Escalade with the road manners of a 5 Series, for buyers who had spent decades behind the wheel of various BMW sedans, and were now looking for something more practical, without sacrificing that connected driving experience. The X7 was revelation. The numbers told the story. In markets across North America and Europe, the X7 quickly established itself as the benchmark. Month after month, it outsold the Mercedes GLS in key demographics, particularly among buyers who valued driving engagement over sheer opulence. This wasn't just about sales figures either. The X7 commanded respect at country clubs in Connecticut and on the streets of Frankfurt alike. It represented arrival, success, and most importantly for the brand, it kept existing BMW customers in the family when they needed more space. But here's what's fascinating about the Audi Q9 situation. This isn't just another competitor entering the ring with incrementally better specifications. What Audi has done is fundamentally challenge the assumptions that made the X7 successful in the first place. They've asked a crucial question that BMW perhaps should have been asking themselves. In an era where luxury buyers increasingly value seamless technology integration, whisper quiet cabins, and effortless performance over the traditional sports sedan dynamics, does the X7's approach still resonate? The Q9's design philosophy represents a departure from the evolutionary approach we've seen in this segment. While the X7 grew more imposing with each refresh, adopting ever larger kidney grills and more aggressive stance, Audi took their time to study what actual buyers in this segment truly wanted. They conducted extensive research across their key markets, from California to Bavaria, and discovered something that should concern everyone in Munich. The majority of three-row luxury SUV buyers, even those with a history of performance car ownership, rarely if ever use the full dynamic capabilities of their vehicles. What they actually value is a different kind of excellence. This brings us to the Q9's most significant departure from convention. The architecture itself tells you everything you need to know about Audi's philosophy. Built on an evolution of the MLB Evo platform, but incorporating lessons learned from their electric vehicle program, the Q9 sits lower than you'd expect for a vehicle of its size. The wheelbase stretches to an impressive measurement that creates interior space the X7 simply cannot match, yet the overall length remains competitive. How did they achieve this? By abandoning some of the sporting pretenses that add weight and complexity without delivering proportional benefit to the target customer. The suspension system deserves particular attention because this is where Audi's engineers made their boldest statement. Instead of trying to make a three-row SUV handle like a sports sedan, which inevitably involves compromises, they developed what they're calling a predictive air suspension system that prioritizes comfort and composure over outright cornering speeds. Now, before the BMW faithful dismiss this as soft, understand what's actually happening here. The system uses forward-facing cameras and GPS data to read the road ahead and pre-adjust damping and spring rates for optimal ride quality. On the Autobahn, it creates a magic carpet ride that makes the X7's adaptive dampers feel almost crude by comparison. Industry insiders reveal that Audi conducted back-to-back testing with the X7 on various road surfaces, and the results were eye-opening. On broken pavement, the kind you encounter on American highways or rural European roads, the Q9 suspension filtered out impacts that the X7 transmitted to passengers. More tellingly, in real-world driving scenarios that actual owners experience. 67 miles. You can do your daily driving in a full-size, three-row luxury SUV on electricity alone. And when you need to drive from London to Edinburgh or Los Angeles to San Francisco, you've got the combustion engine as backup. Audi's Q8 TFSIe gives you 28 miles of electric range. BMW doesn't even offer a plug-in hybrid X7 in most markets anymore because they couldn't make the packaging work. Let's address what this means for your ownership experience, because theoretical capability means nothing if it doesn't translate to real-world benefit. That 67-mile electric range on the 680 means that if you have a typical commute of under 30 miles each way, you're essentially driving an electric vehicle during the week. The average cost of electricity in the United States is about 16 cents per kilowatt-hour. Charging that 31 kilowatt-hour battery from empty costs you roughly $5. 67 miles for $5. Compare that to the GLS 580 V8, which will get you maybe 18 miles per gallon in mixed driving. At current fuel prices, 67 miles cost you about $22 in premium gasoline. Over a year of typical driving, you're looking at a difference of over $3,000 in fuel costs alone. The plug-in hybrid commands a $14,000 premium over the 580. You've paid for that difference in under 5 years just in fuel savings. And that's before considering reduced brake wear from regenerative braking and less frequent oil changes. But here's where Mercedes has really thought this through in a way that Audi and BMW haven't: the battery placement. In most plug-in hybrids, including Audi's attempts, the battery pack compromises either cargo space or third-row legroom because it's packaged under the load floor. Mercedes has split the battery into modules that sit in the center tunnel and under the front seats in a T configuration. Third-row space is identical across all GLS variants. Cargo capacity behind the third row is identical. You're not sacrificing anything for that electric capability. This seems obvious in hindsight, but it required a ground-up platform design. You can't retrofit this approach onto an existing architecture, which is exactly why BMW and Audi can't match it with their current platforms. The suspension technology is another area where the gap has widened dramatically. The GLS comes standard with adaptive air suspension. That's table stakes in this segment. But Mercedes has developed what they're calling E-Active Body Control Plus. This is the third generation of their hydraulic active suspension system, and the improvements are substantial. Each wheel has its own hydraulic actuator that can extend or compress independently, but the new system adds predictive capability using the stereo cameras and forward-facing radar. The system looks ahead up to 50 meters, identifies road imperfections, and pre-adjusts the suspension to compensate before you reach them. In practice, this means the GLS can literally lean into corners like a motorcycle, reducing body roll to nearly zero while maintaining comfort. It can also lift individual wheels over obstacles, providing an approach angle that shouldn't be possible on a vehicle with this much overhang. I drove the GLS 680 on the same route outside Stuttgart where I tested the BMW 7M60i last year and the Audi SQ8 the year before that. There's a particular section of B road with a series of mid-speed compressions and expansions that unsettles every SUV I've driven there. The X7, even in its most aggressive suspension setting, has this floaty moment at the crest of the second rise where you feel the mass shifting forward and the rear suspension struggling to keep up. The SQ8 is better with its sport differential helping to manage the weight transfer, but you're still aware you're in a 5,000-pound SUV. The GLS simply glides through that section. The hydraulic system is preemptively adjusting the damping and ride height so smoothly that your inner ear doesn't register the undulation. Your passenger doesn't grip the door handle. Your coffee stays in the cup. It sounds like a small thing until you experience it, and then you realize this is the difference between a very good luxury SUV and an exceptional one. Now BMW will tell you the X7's adaptive M suspension, with their electronically controlled dampers, is sophisticated enough for this segment. Audi will point to their adaptive air suspension with controlled damping in the Q8, and they're not wrong, those systems are good. But here's the fundamental difference. Those are reactive systems. They respond to inputs as they happen. The Mercedes system is predictive. It's preparing for inputs before they occur. That's not a minor technical distinction. It's a completely different approach to ride quality that requires more computing power, more sensors, and more sophisticated software integration. It's also more expensive to engineer and manufacture, which is why BMW and Audi haven't done it. Mercedes decided the flagship SUV was worth the investment. Let's talk about the interior, because this is where luxury SUVs traditionally separate themselves from mainstream offerings. The 2027 GLS introduces a new interior architecture that Mercedes is calling sensual clarity. The hyperscreen approach from the EQS is here, but refined. You get a 12.3-inch driver display, a 17.7-inch central touchscreen, and a 12.3-inch passenger display, all integrated under a single piece of curved glass that spans the entire dashboard width. But unlike the EQS, where the screen dominates and feels technology forward at the expense of warmth, the GLS balances this with materials and lighting that create genuine ambience. The standard interior uses Nappa leather, but the upgraded exclusive Nappa option introduces a semi-aniline leather that's perforated for the climate-controlled seats with a texture that's noticeably softer than what you'll find in the X7's merino leather or the Q8's Valcona leather. I've sat in all three within the same week, and there's a tactile difference. The Mercedes leather feels less processed, more natural, with a subtle grain that changes with the light. It's a small detail, but when you're spending this much money, small details compound into an overall impression of quality. The second row is where the GLS makes its strongest argument. You can auction individual captain's chairs with a center console that includes its own climate controls, heated and ventilated seating, massage functions, and here's the differentiator: powered adjustable leg rests with memory function. Audi offers powered leg rests in the Q8, but they're manual adjust only and don't have memory. BMW doesn't offer them at all in the X7. For the business executive who spends significant time in the back seat while a driver handles the commute, this is the difference between arriving in a meeting refreshed versus arriving cramped. But here's what really matters for families. And yes, people do buy these as family vehicles despite the price point. The third row is actually usable for adults. I'm 6'1", and I can sit in the third row of the GLS with acceptable headroom and legroom for trips up to an hour. The X7 is close, I'll give BMW credit there, but the floor is higher and my knees are more bent. The Q8 doesn't even offer a third row, which is Audi's admission that they can't package it properly in that sportback roofline. When you're buying a 3-row SUV, having a third row that adults can actually use isn't a nice-to-have feature. It's the entire point of the form factor. The technology integration is another area where Mercedes has pulled ahead. The MBUX infotainment system in the GLS is running on the latest generation hardware with processing power that's genuinely quick. Screen transitions are instantaneous. Voice recognition actually works reliably in multiple languages and accents, which matters for a vehicle sold globally. The BMW iDrive 8 system in the X7 is good, but it still has this slight lag when you're switching between major functions like navigation to media. The Audi MMI in the Q8 has gotten better, but the voice control still struggles with anything beyond basic commands. But more important than raw performance is the interface logic. Mercedes has organized the MBUX system around use cases, rather than technical functions. You don't navigate through menus to adjust the climate control for the second row. You swipe down from the top, and there's a dedicated zone control that shows all 3 rows simultaneously. You want to send a navigation destination to someone else in the car, there's a share function that uses the vehicle's internal network. These sound like obvious features, but neither BMW nor Audi has implemented them this seamlessly. The difference is Mercedes brought in user experience designers from outside the automotive industry who questioned why things had always been done a certain way. The result is a system that feels less like automotive infotainment and more like a premium consumer electronics device that happens to be in a car. The head-up display deserves specific mention because it represents a generational leap. The display area is substantially larger than previous systems, projecting information that appears to float about 10 feet in front of the windshield. But the real advancement is the augmented reality integration. Navigation arrows appear to paint themselves on the actual road surface when you're approaching a turn. If the adaptive cruise control detects a vehicle slowing ahead, a visual warning highlights that specific vehicle in your field of view. This isn't gimmicky, it's genuinely useful because it keeps your eyes focused on the road while still providing critical information. BMW's head-up display in the X7 is still showing basic speed and navigation icons. Audi's system in the Q8 has some augmented reality features, but the implementation feels like a first-generation technology because it is. Mercedes is already on the 3rd iteration of this system, and the refinement shows. Let's address the elephant in the showroom: price and value proposition. The GLS 450 starts at $132,000. The 580 comes in at $147,000. The 680 plug-in hybrid is $161,000. These are serious numbers. The BMW X7 M60 starts at $107,000. The Audi SQ8 is around $92,000. On paper, Mercedes is asking for a significant premium. But here's what you need to consider. That base GLS 450 comes standard with features that are optional or unavailable on the competitors. The e-active body-controlled suspension, that's standard equipment. On the BMW, the adaptive M suspension is optional. The head-up display with augmented reality, standard on the GLS, optional on the X7, not available on the SQ8. The Burmester 3D surround sound system, with 31 speakers, standard on the GLS 580 and up. The Bang & Olufsen system in the Q8 is a $4,000 option. The Bowers & Wilkins in the X7 is over $6,000. When you build out an X7 M60i to match the equipment level of a GLS 580, you're at $138,000. You're within $10,000 of the Mercedes, but you're getting a reactive suspension instead of a predictive one. Less rear seat space, no third row leg rests, and an interior that's a generation behind in materials and technology. The Audi requires so many individual options to approach the GLS specification that you end up over $115,000. And you still don't have a third row or the suspension technology. The 680 plug-in hybrid is the most expensive, but consider the total cost of ownership. Over 5 years and 75,000 miles, the fuel savings alone are approximately $15,000 compared to running the V8 in normal driving. Factor in reduced brake maintenance from regenerative braking. That's another $2,000 over the same period. You've absorbed $17,000 of that $14,000 premium just in operating costs. And that's before considering potential tax incentives for plug-in vehicles depending on your jurisdiction. In California, you're eligible for a $7,500 state incentive that essentially makes the 680 the same out-of-pocket cost as the 580, but with better performance and dramatically lower operating costs. Neither BMW nor Audi can offer this equation because they don't have a competitive plug-in hybrid in this segment. There's also the residual value consideration. Mercedes-Benz three-row SUVs have historically held value better than their competitors, particularly in the certified pre-owned market. A 3-year-old GLS typically retains 58 to 60% of its original value. The X7 is closer to 52%. The Q8, being sportier and less practical, drops to around 48%. Over a typical lease period, that difference in residual value translates to lower monthly payments on the Mercedes despite the higher initial price. For the buyer who trades vehicles every 3 to 4 years, the GLS is actually the more financially rational choice. Now let's talk about what this vehicle represents in the broader context of automotive history and where the luxury SUV segment is heading. We're at an inflection point in the industry. The internal combustion engine isn't dead, but its role is changing. Pure electric vehicles are gaining acceptance, but range anxiety and charging infrastructure concerns are real, particularly for buyers who want one vehicle that can do everything. The plug-in hybrid, done correctly, is the bridge technology that gives you the efficiency and low emissions of an EV for daily use with the flexibility of a combustion engine for longer trips. Mercedes recognized this earlier than BMW or Audi and invested accordingly. The 680 plug-in hybrid isn't a compliance vehicle or a marketing exercise. It's a fully realized product that doesn't compromise on capability. That's why it matters. BMW killed their X7 plug-in hybrid program because they couldn't make it work without sacrificing third row space or cargo capacity. Audi's Q8 TSSIE exists, but it's barely marketed and dealers don't stock it because the electric range is too short to justify the complexity. Mercedes solved the packaging problem, delivered meaningful electric range, and made it the flagship model, rather than an each offering. That's leadership. Looking at the competitive landscape, this puts enormous pressure on BMW and Audi. The X7 is due for a refresh in late 2027, and there are rumors BMW is considering skipping a plug-in hybrid variant entirely and going straight to a full electric version for 2029. That might work in Europe, where charging infrastructure is dense and average driving distances are shorter, but it's a significant risk in the American market, where buyers want flexibility. The Q8 is on a similar trajectory, with Audi reportedly planning an electric successor rather than investing in improving the current plug-in hybrid system. Mercedes is betting that buyers want choice and flexibility, and the market data supports this. Plug-in hybrid sales have grown consistently over the past 3 years, while full electric vehicle sales have plateaued. People like the idea of electric driving, but want the security of a combustion engine as backup. The GLS 680 gives them that in the most refined package available. The autonomous driving capability is another area where Mercedes has opened a gap. The Drive Pilot system, already certified for use in Germany and California, is available on the GLS as an option. This is genuine Level 3 autonomy, meaning the vehicle can drive itself in certain conditions and the driver is not responsible for monitoring the road. BMW and Audi both have advanced driver assistance systems, but they're still Level 2, requiring constant driver supervision. The technical difference is significant, but the practical implication is even more so. In stop-and-go traffic on approved highways, the GLS can drive itself while you respond to emails, take a phone call, or just relax. The liability shifts to Mercedes during this time. That's a fundamental change in what a vehicle can do. The certification process for Drive Pilot is extensive, which is why it's only available in limited markets and conditions, but Mercedes went through that process. They invested in the redundant systems required for safety certification, the LiDAR, the additional cameras, the redundant steering and braking systems. BMW and Audi decided that investment wasn't justified yet. Maybe they're right, and the technology needs more maturation, or maybe Mercedes saw an opportunity to establish leadership in an area that will define luxury vehicles for the next decade. There's also a philosophical difference in how these three manufacturers approach luxury that's worth examining. BMW has always been about driving dynamics. The X7, despite being a large SUV, still has that characteristic BMW handling balance and steering feel. It's a driver's vehicle first, a luxury vehicle second. Audi's approach with the Q8 is about technology and design. It's sleek, it's modern, it's packed with the latest systems, and it makes a statement. Mercedes with the GLS is focused on comfort and occasion. This is a vehicle meant to transport important people to important places in the highest level of comfort. The driving dynamics are excellent, don't misunderstand, but they're in service of the overall experience rather than the primary focus. None of these approaches is inherently superior, they're just different value propositions. But in the full-size, 3-row luxury SUV segment, specifically, the Mercedes philosophy aligns better with what buyers actually use these vehicles for. You're not buying a GLS to attack mountain roads on the weekend. You're buying it to transport family in comfort, to make a statement pulling up to the country club, to have a vehicle that can serve as a mobile office with its connectivity in space. The X7 tries to be sporty in a package that doesn't benefit from sportiness. The Q8 chose style over practicality by eliminating the third row. The GLS understands its mission and executes it without compromise. The materials and build quality reveal this focus. The GLS has double-pane acoustic glass on all windows as standard equipment. The doors close with a vault-like solidity that's the result of extensive sound engineering and precise manufacturing tolerances. The interior ambient lighting system has 64 colors and 10 preset themes. But more importantly, the light dispersion is even and sophisticated rather than garish. These are details that don't photograph well or show up in specification sheets, but they create an atmosphere of quality that you experience every time you use the vehicle. Compare this to the X7 where the ambient lighting feels like an afterthought, or the Q8 where the design is dramatic but the execution reveals cost-cutting in unexpected places, like the quality of the plastics in the cargo area or the feel of the seat adjustment switches. Mercedes sweats the details throughout the entire vehicle, not just the parts you touch most frequently. The safety technology deserves discussion because it's become a key differentiator in the luxury segment. The GLS comes with a comprehensive suite of active safety features, including adaptive cruise control with stop and go, active steering assist,